3 years ago, Aiden had no idea how to make a good hi-hat pattern. He spent hours every night making beats, but none of them would sell. Then, he learned some simple tricks on making hi-hat patterns. His beats started selling, and he finally started making good money. Who was Aiden? Me. So, you want to get better hi-hat patterns. This is one of the most common problems producers go through. I think that hi-hats are one of the hardest things to master just because of how nuanced they are. Because you don't want your hi-hats to be too upfront, but you also want them to still be noticeable. It's hard to find that balance, which is why you're watching this video. Alright, so I went ahead and I made a beat for this video just to show you the tips for making hi-hat patterns. So I'll let that play without the hi-hat just so you can hear what we're working with. So now, the most important thing for a hi-hat pattern is the first part, choosing the right hi-hat for your song. For example, I wouldn't want to choose this boom bap hi-hat for this trap song. Like, listen to it, it just sounds like crap. Because these hi-hats are for specific scenarios. Now, it can be really hard to find what hi-hat is best for your song. So something that I do is I'll choose a random one. I'll go ahead and do the two-step just so I can see what it sounds like. And then here's a tip for FL Studio. In your files over here, if you control left click on it, it'll replace whatever sample you have selected in your channel rack. So what I'll do is I'll let it play and then I'll keep choosing random ones to see just which one sounds really good for the song. So let's go ahead and do that together. Now again, hi-hat selection is the most important part, because you could have a pretty bad pattern and if you have the right hi-hat, it'll still sound pretty good. But if you have a bad hi-hat, even the best pattern in the world couldn't save you from it. So now that we have the correct hi-hat selected, let's go ahead and start working with the pattern. So like I said earlier, the best pattern you can go for is the two-step. It's so basic, but it will never sound bad. There's not one single song where a two-step hi-hat is going to sound bad. It's so simple, it gives it a little bit of a bounce, gives it that speed, does what a hi-hat should do. And honestly, a two-step is the absolute best choice you can make if you have a lot of other instruments, a lot of perks, a lot of melodic instruments going on. But for this one, all I have is that guitar and a kick, a snare, and an 808. So I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth with this hi-hat. So there are a few different kind of rolls you can do, short ones and long ones. For example, to do a short one, all you gotta do is select a note, Control D, Control U, and then boom. These are really subtle. These are ones you don't really notice whenever you hear a song for the first time. It won't scream at you this roll. You know, it'll just sound like that's the hi-hat pattern. It's really subtle. And I think that these are usually the most effective. Like, I can go ahead and put just a few in here, and it's already going to sound really good. Just listen. See, that already sounds like really good just from two little subtle rolls. And also, while we're on this topic, let's go ahead and talk about hi-hats and 808s together. These two instruments are so close to each other, you need to think about your 808 whenever you're making that hi-hat pattern. So for example, in this song, my 808 is doing a little roll here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a hi-hat roll to match it. Look, the exact same thing there. Matches perfectly. So now if I play it with that extra roll in there to match the 808, it's going to sound a whole lot better. See, it just adds a little bit of extra connection, because you want all of your drums to feel connected. You know, there's supposed to be one drum kit. So everything has to sound together. Now let's talk about the long rolls. Let me go ahead and get rid of everything I just did. All right, so for a longer one, you're going to take it, you're going to drag it out to the next note, and then you can chop it. And so one of these would sound like this. Or these are more in your face, you know, this is more of like a, oh, it's a roll, like up in your face, you know. And these, I personally like using them right whenever the 808 hits. So for example, if I have one right here at the beginning, when the kick hits, and then again when the kick hits later, right here. Let's see how this sounds. See, I think that these long rolls, when they follow that kick, that's what really makes it sound good. But you don't have to. You can make these anywhere you want. Honestly, you're going to hear tips from YouTubers and other producers who say, oh, you got to have it hit on the beat or whatever. Don't listen to that. Tell them to shut the hell up. Producing is an art and you can do whatever you want. So for example, I can have one right here, and then I can have one right here to lead into the second snare. So even that sounds really good. You just gotta play with it and experiment. Making patterns is all about experimenting. So now let's talk about hi-hat pitching. Hi-hat pitching simply refers to whenever you put a note in your hi-hat pattern that isn't on just the C5. So for example, if I wanted to put one like right here down lower, it gives it some extra bounce. See, a little bit of extra bounce, a little bit of extra variation there. And you can also do it in the higher end. So like what I like to do sometimes is do little higher rolls like this. And that juxtaposition with the lower ones and then the higher ones sounds really good. Some popular examples of this are EXO Tour Life. I mean, that hi-hat pattern is literally just a two-step, but then it has a note down here hitting on every beat. Like, go listen to it. It's so easy to hear. It's just like this. All right, so that was still pretty simple. It was just a two-step with some rolls. Let's get to the more complex stuff. So some songs don't have that two-step bass. Some songs have just hi-hats wherever. Just wherever you want, just put one. So for example, I can do one like this, this, this. Even that sounds pretty good. Just having that hi-hat there to give it the extra bounce, fire. But then even with these, you can add in some rolls. So for example, I might want to add one right here in the higher end because we just learned about hi-hat pitching. So you can go ahead and do like that. Just to give it some extra flair, some extra speed. And then you can have some down in the lower regions too. Like I know that an example of this is Mileage by Playboi Carti. The first bar is higher pitch, but then the second bar, every other bar, it's just the same thing repeated but in a lower pitch. So it would be like this, but then if I just take this down. Like I said, the most important thing is hi-hat selection. So like this right here is fire, but if I choose the wrong hi-hat, like this one right here, listen to it now. This sounds like crap. I mean, this hi-hat is a good hi-hat, but for a different situation. You gotta learn what situations require the different kinds of hi-hat. Go use these tips in your beats, leave a comment, and I'll check out your beats.